Hi everyone, and welcome to the Inspire and Empower Change podcast. I'm Rowan Hill, your host, and I talk with people about their personal and professional experience in the substance use and mental health fields, their experience with addiction, recovery, and any related topic. I strive to learn how they were able to affect positive change in their own lives, and also what they do in our community to help others who want to change. At Sandstone Care, our mission is to inspire and empower change. So we want to learn as much as possible about what other people are doing to accomplish that in our community. As a reminder, Sandstone Care is a substance use and co-occurring disorder treatment program for teenagers and young adults. We provide a continuum of care with lots of wraparound support, including psychiatric consultation, sober living houses for young adult women and young adult men, academic and vocational support, and lots of family involvement. As a co-occurring disorder program, we really focus on the underlying mental health struggles that often come along with substance use. So in today's interview, I spoke with Kathleen Rhodes and Lindsey Chadwick from the Betty Ford Children's Program. It's a great program. I'll let them tell you all about it. Much needed for our community to have a support system for the whole family, including the younger children, so that addiction doesn't become something that keeps running in families, but rather recovery becomes something that starts to become passed along. And so a quick disclaimer, we did have some technical difficulties. Our audio and visual froze up on us midway through our first go at the interview. So we tried to redo it. It felt a little awkward to go through the same conversation again, more or less. But some new and fresh stuff came up for me, so I had a really fun time. They were total troopers, bearing with my technical mishaps, and if you notice any abrupt cuts, then that's why. So please enjoy, and without further ado, Kathleen and Lindsey. Hi, Rowan here with Sandstone Care again, and today I have Lindsey and Kathleen from the Betty Ford Children's Center. Lindsey, you want to go first and introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm Lindsey. I've worked at the Betty Ford Children's Program for almost 10 years now, and I'm a counselor there, and it's pretty much the best job ever.
Oh, wow.
Definitely the best job ever. My name is Kathleen Rhodes. I'm also a counselor at the Betty Ford Center Children's Program. Started there in 2012, so it's been a little while, and it's fun every day, and this is really cool to be here and to get to talk about what we do and why we love it so much.
Yeah, and I'm really excited to have you here because, you know, we work with families so much, and so we really see the value in supporting the extension, and that, you know, substance use, mental health, those things affect so many people that are connected to the person who's actually struggling and maybe attending a treatment program. And so you guys are able to also work with the extension of that. And I know also, you know, Betty Ford, Hazelden Betty Ford is a huge name in the addiction treatment industry. And so how did this come to be, like this children's program? Do you guys know about that? Or?
I know a little bit about it.
Okay, yeah, I'm really curious.
It's been going on for a long time,
okay.
Over 30 years.
Oh, wow.
It started with Mrs. Ford, Betty Ford herself. She went to treatment due to an intervention by her children, and her husband too. And she went to treatment and had so much success with it. They were like, you got to open up your own treatment center. Like, you have this name that people know. Mm-hmm. And it was really important to her that the whole family get treatment. Okay. And that was a big part. She's like, okay, I'll do it, but we have to have a children's program. And then she brought on eventually Jerry Moe, who's our boss, and he was working at Sierra Tucson. And he did the children's program there, and then they wanted him at Betty Ford, so he went over there to do the children's program. He's kind of started the curriculum and everything for that together. Okay. And then, let's see, in 2003, they got funding to have a children's program in Colorado, and that was really important to Mrs. Ford as well. Her and the former president have a house up in Vail, and Colorado just has a really special place in her heart. She was also really good friends with Bill Daniels, who is where we get our funding from, the Daniels Fund. So part of that partnership brought the children's program to Colorado.
Okay, cool. And you said since 2012 you've been there, yep. And also same time frame, or?
I started in 2008.
2008. Oh wow, even longer.
Yeah.
And so let's dive right into it. What is the children's program? Because it's not for people who are actively in addiction, right?
No, it's for children 7 to 12 who have a loved one who has had an addiction. Okay. Whether they're currently in their addiction or they're in recovery or somewhere in between that, they can always come to the group and get help. We know that kids can have their own recovery. They deserve to have their own healing too. Yeah. So what we do is a lot of education. We teach kids about addiction. We teach the disease model of addiction. So we show kind of how people get it, how they can get better. But most importantly, we teach kids their own coping skills so that they can deal with what's going on in their lives, but also healthily deal with things in the future. Because we know that addiction runs in families, so we're very preventative in that way. We want kids to know tools that they can use instead of using drugs or alcohol in their future. Right. So then we also have a family piece where they have a caregiver attend the group with them. So we teach a lot of communication skills, how to talk about addiction together in a kid-friendly way. We give kids an opportunity to share what it's been like with their caregiver so that they can kind of let it all out and get some support. And then we talk about family self-care, how to get better together, how we move forward in recovery, keeping kids in the family as a part of recovery so that everyone can kind of move forward and have, better full family healthy results.
Wow, yeah, that's really important. I think that communication piece struck a chord with me because we were talking before we turned on the cameras about how the parents often don't think that their kids are seeing what's going on, and so don't know how to talk about it. And so it seems like that piece is really important. And I'm just curious what you see there. If you could share some of that.
Yeah, that's a really common family dynamic because kids are younger. A lot of times the use doesn't always happen in the house, so grown-ups and families think that the kids weren't affected or they don't know. And what we see is a lot of times they don't have that language to bring it up. Right. They probably see some behaviors, they see some things are different, but they don't know necessarily because no one's talking to them about it. So a kid's not going to come up to you and say, I noticed that when mom or dad or older brother or sister, they're drinking alcohol and this is happening. They might not have that language. A lot of kids come to our group and they don't even know really what the word addiction means. Right. So that's part of our curriculum is teaching them that stuff and giving them that language to be able to talk about it. The other thing is we often ask too, well, have you asked them? Have you talked to them about it? And a lot of times the answer is, well, no, I didn't know how. A lot of our grown-ups don't know how to talk to their kids.
So you're saying talking to the grown-ups about that.
About what's going on. So we try to give kids the language so that they can talk about it. The other thing we see too is that because that use isn't always happening in the house, but kids still experience the effects of it. So they experience sleeping. My mom sleeps too much, or mom and dad fight all the time, or my brother's not allowed to live in the house, and that hurts my feelings because they don't know why. They don't know why so-and-so doesn't spend enough time with them. Or when they are with them, they're not really there. They're not really present. Right. So there's a lot of ways that kids are affected by drug and alcohol use, even if they never see that person use. Right. And it's important to kind of acknowledge that because when kids don't know what's going on, they tend to blame themselves because they're egocentric at that age. Everything good in the world happens because of them. Everything bad happens because of them. So when grown-ups aren't themselves for whatever reason, they might think oh, they must be mad at me because I did something wrong, or something's up, but I don't know what, and it must be me. I'm stressing my grown-up out too much, whatever it is. So
internalize a lot of their parents' behaviors.
Yeah, big time.
And we think that a lot of the caregivers and older siblings that we work with, a lot of their not talking to their kids comes out of their own fear and their own guilt and shame about the things that have happened. Yeah. They feel so badly for any harm that they may have done to their kid, and especially when they're getting better, sometimes they just, I'm better now, I'm in recovery, let's just move forward.
Right, let's pretend this didn't happen.
Absolutely. But it is so important to talk that stuff through and let kids know that it wasn't because of you, and this is a disease and this is what happened, and here I am trying to get better. Be a part of my recovery and let's get better together. We were just talking with Jerry yesterday, and he brought up this really great idea that, we know that addiction runs in families. Yeah. That's clear. But we also know that recovery runs in families, right? Cool. So, why hide your recovery from your kids or from your siblings? Let them be a part of the solution and the healing, because that's what they're going to learn and that's what they're going to continue in their life.
Yeah. And so what language do you use? Because you're saying you're trying to introduce this language in a way to talk about it to kids. How is that different from the way you might talk about that with grown-ups? Can you give some examples of how you might talk to a kid and teach them what addiction means?
Yeah, so we use a lot of vocabulary words. Okay. What we're really doing in essence is we are taking this person that they love and then showing how addiction has taken over them. Okay. And we're separating the two. Okay. So you can love somebody and be really, really mad at the addiction that's taken over them. Okay. We're helping kids to separate. Okay. So we do a lot of personification of addiction. A counselor will pretend to be addiction at one point, and kids get confronted by addiction and see what that might be like. Okay. We give it some words like addiction traps people, addiction hooks them, it captures them. We talk about what that might look like. And then another activity that we use that is kind of our main thing that we build everything off of is the bag of rocks. So we have this backpack, it's full of heavy stuff. Okay. Kids get to pick it up and carry it and see what it feels like. It's really heavy. So we talk about how people have these heavy bags. They live inside, we can't always see them, but they get really heavy as we go through things. Mm-hmm. And some people never learn a healthy way to put that bag down. Yeah. And what happens is when that bag gets so heavy, they don't know a healthy way to put it down. If they try drugs or alcohol, it's going to make that bag go to sleep. And for some people, that's the first time they feel good in their whole life. They feel free, right? They're not weighed down so much. And since that works the first time, and sometimes, nothing bad happens right away, right? And so they keep doing it. They keep putting their bag down that way, and it gets heavier and heavier, and eventually it stops working. Mm-hmm. No matter how much someone uses or how much they drink, the bag won't go to sleep. Right. And a lot of times...
So, hi, we just had some technical difficulties after recording a full interview. So we're going to try to recreate / create a new interview ending. So where we left off is we were talking about kind of the language that you use to speak to children mm-hmm. about addiction, and you were giving the metaphor of the bag of rocks and how over time the substance use doesn't necessarily can't make that bag go to sleep.
Yeah, it stops working.
Right.
So once it stops working, a lot of times that's when people will ask for help. Yeah. And so then we get to have a discussion about how to ask for help and what that looks like and all the different places people can go. Treatment, AA, counseling, church, friends, places that people can go for help. And what they're really doing when they're there is they're learning how to take care of their backpack in a healthy way. Right? They learn to open it, to look at what's inside, to talk about it and let it out so that their backpack feels lighter and they can live their life the way they want to without lugging that heavy backpack around and without having to put it down with alcohol and drugs. So with that, what we're really teaching kids is how to cope with difficult things in life, how to cope with the feelings that they hold inside, with the hard things that happen to them in healthy ways, mm-hmm. so that hopefully they can live their lives without ever having to be trapped by alcohol and drugs. So that way that we explain it is really helping kids understand how the person they love got trapped in the first place, so that they know that it's not about them, it's not their fault that the person that they love got trapped. This is just something that happened to them. Right. And now they're trying to get better, or we hope that they can. And they can see that the solution is also not up to them. It's not up to a kid when somebody gets better or how they get better or to make them get better. That they've got to learn a healthy way to deal with their bag. Yeah. And first I want to acknowledge it is kind of awkward just knowing, it's like, am I going to ask the same questions again, or is it going to be so it'll just be what it is. Yeah. And I apologize if we end up going over some of the same material we just covered. So, because one thing that we were talking about the first time around too is the kind of the shame and how that, and you touched on that just now as well, how the kids are feeling a lot of shame. They're thinking that maybe it's their fault. Mm-hmm. And the parents are also experiencing that shame, and that is kind of part of the dynamic of just not talking about it. Everyone's kind of isolating in their own feeling that they've done something wrong.
Yeah. if a kid comes to our program and only learn one thing, then it's not their fault. We
Right.
feel like we've kind of done our job.
Yeah.
We really want kids to know that the addiction and the problems in their family aren't their fault. We also know that our grown-ups, when they come to the program, they're feeling that shame and that guilt about what's gone on, about their own, their addictions and what they maybe put their kids through. So a big part of that is breaking those 3 family rules of don't talk, don't trust, don't feel that Claudia Black taught us.
Okay.
So by helping families communicate and be honest and open and share those things, we think that helps make those shame and guilty feelings less powerful when they can really just talk and open it up. Because one thing, our grown-ups come through the program and they feel sometimes it's like, oh, I've done all this stuff and my kids hate me and I'm a terrible person. And we want them to come here and say, no, your kids love you.
Yeah.
Your kids care about you so much, no matter what. That's what we see all the time, no matter what our kids have been through, what their families have been through, what addictions put them through. Kids just want to be around their parents. They just love them. They want them there no matter what. So when parents can come through and see that piece too, we really try to meet them in a very non-judgmental way that, people with addiction aren't bad people. But sometimes bad things happen and it's okay to talk about those, have feelings about those. So we want kids to know that, we want grown-ups to know that, and the more that they can just start talking and get through some of that shame and guilt just seems to kind of melt away for everybody.
Yeah. I think about the Brené Brown stuff around shame, and she talks about how when you can air it out and expose it, it often kind of melts away, as you said. It doesn't really have a place to live, whereas our tendency is to want to really kind of hide it, and then it can kind of fester away at us. And
connection is really what defeats shame a lot, and that happens in our group when we've got, a kid comes and there's 11 other kids who've been through the same thing, but they're all awesome kids and they're all, kind of doing okay. And if I can see that, then maybe I'm okay too, right? Because I have all of this stuff in common with them.
Right.
And so when kids do that, when the grown-ups get to do that, they all get to have that opportunity to learn that, maybe I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. And do you find that the kids are really buying into that connection, and that are they excited to come to the program? Because I imagine too, you guys go 7 to 12, 7 to 13? And I imagine that as a 12-year-old, if you are taking my weekend away, I might not be so excited about it.
Yeah, I would have been kicking and screaming the whole way there. And some kids do. Some kids don't want to be there right away. Some kids come in and they're really nervous because they just don't know who they're going to meet or what it's going to be like. But one of the greatest things to see is the group kind of warm up as the morning goes along. We don't ask them anything about their family for at least the first hour. They come and they just play games. So we're doing a lot of work to create a safe environment where they learn that they can trust and be okay. But one of the greatest things to see at first is when they come in and we have them share in intros just who they are and who they love who has had addiction. And it's funny to see when a kid will, sheepishly go first and say, my mom or my brother or whatever, and then from across the room another kid's like, oh my gosh, my brother has addiction. That happened in my family too, or my parents fight too much, wow. And they get really excited because that's not stuff that they're talking about at school with their friends. So when they're in the children's program and they're learning that other kids have that stuff going on, it lights something up in them. They feel that connection. And it helps them let go of that guilt and shame in such a way that we could never do in therapy with them one-on-one. It's that group atmosphere that helps them feel so connected. And then right from that moment on, they're a part of the program, they want to learn, they're excited, and Friday morning they're bursting through the door ready to participate. It really is that group dynamic, I think, that is such an important part of what we do.
And so let's go over the curriculum a little bit. So they come in on Thursday and do this introduction that you're talking about. And then, let's walk through. You said it's a 4-day program, right?
Sure. So, that first hour, we're just trying to build a little trust, make sure they have some fun. So we end up playing a lot in that first hour. Playing is the number one way kids build trust. With each other, with adults.
Makes sense.
Absolutely. And I think adults also really like to play. I know we do. You don't end up at the children's program unless you really like to play. So we play with them, we get to know them, we do an intro. The adults share too. We share so that they know that we understand what they're going through. Yeah. We do our Bag of Rocks activity. That's like our first learning activity that Kathleen talked about earlier. Yeah. And then we play, again, just for fun, just a plain old fun game. And then we do an addiction game where we teach them kind of what addiction is, what it looks like, some of those same words Kathleen was talking about. That's what we talk too about. People can get sick from addiction. They could even die. That's a reality a lot of our kids face, and they're really worried about it too. So we talk about it. Right. We talk about different ways people can put drugs and alcohol in their body. We include nicotine in that too, because kids already know so much about it. They want to talk about it. Yeah. That's when we play our game where we personify addiction. So someone, when I take my name tag off, I become addiction, and we'll like chase their kids around, and the kids are like, no, they're screaming, and it gets really wild. Yeah. But it's really fun. That's the one we get in trouble at school programs all the time for making a lot of noise. So we try to make all of our games, or all of our learning activities, games and role plays. They're all experiential, interactive, and fun for the most part. And we interact, or we interchange all those with the Just for Fun activity. So many of our kids come to us and they don't get to be kids, or they didn't get to a lot when addiction was around. They don't know how to be kids. So we teach them how to play, how to have fun, how to let loose. So that's really great. And then we have lunch, we go swimming, we do creative activities. The other thing I really like about our program is we like to meet kids where they're at. So for some kids, they really want to talk. Some kids, they're not so verbal. So we'll let them do a drawing activity. They'll get to draw about their feelings and problems and secrets. Other kids will do a writing activity, and some kids will really latch on to that. Some kids really latch on to the role plays and the games. So we want to do, hit all the different ways that someone can really identify and let out their feelings. So we do all kinds of different activities as far as that goes. And Thursday's more that learning day, or education day. We're still building trust. We're getting to know each other. They share a little bit, but it's a lot more learning. Friday's our feelings day. Now that they know us, they know they're safe. Like Kathleen said, they come running in the door Friday morning. Take them swimming again. We end the day every day with like a movie and Oreos. They can just kind of decompress and relax. Try to send them home. Usually they're exhausted and they sleep the whole way home. Saturday is when we have our caregivers come, and that first part of the morning, one of the counselors is teaching the grown-ups all the same things we taught the kids. So the Bag of Rocks, the addiction, all that stuff. We use the phrase TNR, treatment and recovery. It's a superhero who defeats addiction. Oh, nice. So kids really latch onto that too. So we teach our grown-ups all that so that they have that common language to start talking about this stuff. And then we facilitate a communication activity with the grown-ups and the kids where we're trying to teach grown-ups how to manage their emotions and also teach kids that they can let stuff out and share with their grown-ups. And then we do a processing activity with adults. Kids go swimming. Then we play a self-care game where we teach them about self-care and more of those coping skills. And then Sunday looks very similar as far as separating the adults and then coming back together, just to give adults kind of time to process and talk about things as they need to. But Sunday's more of that celebration, like what are we going to do for family self-care? What does TNR look like for us after this program? Because it's really, we're planting a seed in these 4 days. We're not going to be able to cover all the trauma, all the things that have gone on for this family. But we really want to plant seeds and give them some skills that they can continue. Sunday we also refer all our families out, where we meet individually with families, kind of talk to them about what we've seen, because sometimes a family comes through, kids are doing pretty well, but mom and dad are fighting so much that that's really what's bothering them. So we'll refer out for couples or maybe a kid's experienced a lot of grief, and we don't cover that necessarily in our 4 days. We talk about it, but so they might need follow-up care with that. So we try to refer all our families to those long-term services. Because that's not so much what we do. It's more short-term. Anything I missed in those 4 days? Kind of a brief. It's a lot. It's a lot, actually.
That was pretty comprehensive. I think it's so cool how you're kind of doing that, both like getting the kids and then the parents are coming in too. And you were talking about how connected they feel. Like I imagine that, as you were saying, in schools they can't talk about it because their peers aren't necessarily in the same place. Where and as you said too, they don't have the language to even start to talk about that. And if it's not happening in the family, they haven't had that role modeled how to talk about things that are challenging and uncomfortable, and let alone the vocabulary, not knowing how to speak about that either. Where was I going with that? And so do you guys have any kind of aftercare or alumni program? Because it seems like, not being able to talk about this and then getting these 4 days where you suddenly really connect and for the first time maybe have some peers that you're able to talk about this with, and then everyone goes their separate ways. There must be a way for them to connect going forward too.
Yeah, follow-up is really important. Just because it is only 4 days, and if families don't keep up their recovery skills, then things are going to go back to how they were.
Right.
So we do a lot of follow-up activities that families are welcome to be a part of.
Okay.
However, it's a choice, so none of it's mandatory. If they want to stay connected, they can through a weekly aftercare group, which we do at our offices on Wednesdays from 5:30 to 6:30. During that group, we have 3 separate groups that meet. We have one for caregivers, one for teens, which is new this year, and then one for kids.
Okay.
So we've always got a counselor running each group.
Okay.
And that's a great place for people to come and feel that connection, to be a part of, that continued recovery is really cool. And then we have special groups for, we call it Stage 2.
Okay.
We do it at least every other month. It's a 2-day group. It's just for kids. They get to come back, hang out with us, hang out with each other, do more like self-care activities and problem solving. We talk about peer pressure and bullying and ongoing things that they might need extra support with. And it's always really fun. We take them swimming again. We give them good lunches. Yeah. We play a ton. So it's nice just to give them that opportunity to come back to this place where they know recovery exists, where they know they feel safe. It's really cool because we hear from a lot of our families who come consistently to the weekly aftercare. It's kind of a drop-in style group, so they'll come for a while, maybe they'll miss a couple weeks, and we have parents who come back and they're like, we're here, we had a rough week, and my kid told me we really need to go to Betty Ford this week.
Oh wow.
They know that it's a safe place where they get to come and be in recovery together.
Cool.
And I think it's a great model, especially for kids. When they come to the weekly aftercare group, they know that their grown-up is there in their group doing their TNR too. So they get to all do it together, but in their own way, which is a really cool way for families to recover, right? Everyone's in charge of their own recovery, and they do it separately. It's different for each person, but when they all do their recovery, they all get better together.
Right, yeah.
It's hilarious too. The kids run in, they just take their shoes off and throw their coat. It's like their second home.
We have a couple people who bring dinner
all
the
really?
time,
Well,
show up with food, and
kids come early, do their homework first, and it's really a nice homey feel, and we really love having that environment.
Yeah. Do you know? Have you done any outcome tracking on what the rate is of these kids? Being able to steer clear versus the average. Do you know anything about that? Or
it's a little bit difficult. We just participated, well, not just 5 years ago. In a long-term study through the Addiction Research Institute. Okay. They didn't measure necessarily that kids didn't go on and use, but they measured if kids continued to remember what they were taught. And that the grown-ups were also involved, that they still utilized a lot of the skills they learned in the program. Okay. And that was successful. Okay. What they found for the most part in that study was that, the group dynamic is really powerful. Okay. That the language used is really powerful, that kids remember. We hear from people all the time, kind of anecdotally, oh, my kid's 19, but he'll still say, Mom, I got rocks in my bag, Okay. So that's more of what they've studied so far. Yeah. It's just been kind of a matter of funding, and it's difficult to track some of those things. So really hard, we have a lot of anecdotal evidence, but not a ton of specific evidence that it works long term. And I think kind of like we were saying maybe before, I just remembered, that we're not so naive to think that all the kids that come through our program are not going to go on and use one day. Right. But our hope is that because they've been exposed to recovery, they've been exposed to TNR, that they're going to ask for help sooner, recognize a problem sooner, that they'll know where they can go. I don't remember anyone talking to me about that when I was in school. Well, if you do use and you do have a problem, here's what you do. But just don't do it. Right. And we try to be really open and honest about AA meetings, NA meetings. Here's a therapist, counselor, church, rehab, like we talk about all that stuff.
Right,
so kids know, like, here's how to recognize a problem.
Yeah.
You know, we talk about that too in our group. So
yeah.
hopefully, and that part we haven't been able to study as much, but
right,
we hear a lot anecdotally that kids are using their skills and talking about stuff, and even if we've heard a few times kids have tried, and then they've gone and told their parents and, you know, talked about it, which I think is really powerful and amazing that they trusted their grown-ups to come say, like, hey, I tried this and it scared me and I don't know what to do, and or whatever, you know, the experience was. So
yeah, and it seems like if nothing else, you've opened that door for communication. Like, that's huge. Cause, yeah.
The cool experience we get to have sometimes is we have a yearly celebration
okay.
where we throw a big party. This year we're going to do it at a park with like bouncy castles and all kinds of great stuff. So we'll make sure that you get to come and join us.
Yeah,
it's so
I want
fun.
to come.
But every year we go, we get to see kids, you know, who come back year after year.
Yeah.
They want to see their friends and they want to see us, and we get to watch them grow up. And it's always cool when, you know, you see a kid at the celebration and they come back and they're like, hey, like this thing happened this year and here's how I dealt with it. And you know, I was going through this thing and then my mom found me a counselor and now I'm feeling a lot better. Because they know how to talk to each other.
Yeah.
We had a really cool experience with a girl who she had to do some like volunteer hours for her high school, and she came and you know, hung out with us during a stage 2, and we were at the pool and she was just telling us about, you know, just kind of her life and how things were and catching us up on things, and let us know that, you know, she came through the group when she was younger, and since then the person she loved had passed away from their use. And, you know, it was really hard, she said, but what she learned in the group really helped her because she had already sort of had this experience of mourning and, you know, the loss of that person in her life even before they passed away. Oh, yeah, I think we're frozen.
Yeah, we're frozen. Oh, dear.
We're unfrozen.
Unfrozen. Where were we?
You had just asked the question, I feel like.
Okay, yeah, I was going to ask about your personal lives.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, so I'll start with you, Lindsey. Yeah, I'm just curious kind of what got you into this field, because you guys are talking a lot about how rewarding it is, and I imagine that there's also a lot of challenge in showing up for these kids who are able to share this for the first time has got to be, you know, got to take some skill and also can be really challenging. And so I'm curious, like, what if there's something in your own life that helped you connect to this? Is that something that you wish you'd had in your family, or is it something that that you thought was really valuable in your family that you wanted to bring to others?
You know, there's like that saying of like, be the person you needed when you were little.
Okay.
And that's been one of the most rewarding things for me too.
Okay. Is
growing up, alcohol and drugs were a huge problem in like all areas of my family, both sides, just everywhere.
Okay, wow.
And specifically, my dad struggled with alcohol a lot when I was growing up.
Okay.
So I had some experiences of that. And what's kind of funny about it is that when I first started here, that wasn't necessarily my motivation.
Okay.
I loved that it helped kids. I liked that it was in addictions. I thought that was interesting to me. I knew I wanted to help people, but I didn't really know how. So I applied for this job as a secretary.
Okay.
Because that was kind of like what my experience was right out of college.
Okay.
I kind of needed a job, and thought it just sounded really cool. And so part of it, the interview process, is you have to volunteer for 4 days for the program.
Okay.
And during the program, I was like, oh, I have to do this all the time. This is amazing. So during my interview, I was like, I don't want to be a secretary.
Heck of an interview.
I know. I'm surprised they hired me. I was like, I want to be a counselor. Like, this is awesome. And they were like, well, we're not hiring for that right now, but you can be a secretary and work your way up. And they were really awesome about like supporting me, and I got to like volunteer for all the programs. I got to volunteer, but it was really great, and I just loved it, and that's what motivated me to go back to grad school. And you know, something that was really cool too is we do our program in Adams 12 schools, and that's where I grew up and that's where I went to school. Okay. So every time we go there, I just like have this little extra element of like, man, I wish I had had this when I was a kid.
Yeah.
But no one really recognized it in my family a lot because we were somewhat more functional, and I was very much perfectionist as a kid, so I got great grades. Like, people didn't really know stuff was going on for me, I don't think.
Right.
Which is what I really like about our school program. Get to go get those kids who might not necessarily come to our program.
Right.
And so that's really special for me, kind of getting to go back to the schools that we haven't gone exactly to my elementary school, but maybe one day. But like all the schools where I grew up and in my old neighborhood, and that feels very full circle, and that's been really powerful for me. And once I started the work here, I loved every minute of it, and went back to grad school so I could get my master's in counseling, and just love being a part of the families and the work, and the families do so much of the work. We just kind of provide the structure, but getting to watch that and be a part of it and stay in these kids' lives at times is just amazing, and it's the best job ever. We get to have fun and be kids. We get to do cool stuff and go to conferences and do podcasts and stuff like that, which is really fun too. And it's a really powerful program to work for, and the best part too is just everyone we work with is amazing, because you don't end up here without really wanting to be here. And this isn't a job to anybody who works at the children's program, and our boss is like that, and he passed that down to us, I think, and it's just a really great place to work too. So it's pretty much awesome.
Great.
Did I say that already?
Well, thanks so much. And it sounds like, for you it is kind of this circle of being able to provide something that you wish you had as a kid.
Yeah, I really wonder how my family might have, things would have been easier growing up. My family is still going through stuff, and, my dad doesn't drink anymore, but my brother does now.
Okay.
And I always wondered, how our lives would have been a little different if we'd have had more just communication, growing up. I think that would have been so helpful. So many of those family secrets and stuff, and just kind of ignoring things, and not a lot of healthy communication there. We're learning. Things are still getting better, but
Are you able to now kind of provide some of those skills and some of that communication for your family, or is it always a little harder with your own family?
It's still hard. It does not, just because doesn't make it easier. They're still crazy, but if you really want to get into it, it has been helpful though. I learned a lot personally.
Okay.
I didn't know this stuff growing up, and we see grown-ups have that process too of I grew up with this and I didn't know, and that's what a lot of my addiction led to. And so I still learn a lot. I still learn from our kids and our families all the time of ways I can do better. And it's not about me, but still you can't help but learn from the people you're with. So it's been cool. It has been helpful, I think, overall for my family. A little more of we should talk about this too, but doesn't mean you're good at it.
Right. Yeah. Well, it probably helps you gain some appreciation for what the families are going through.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I tell our kiddos that all the time. I'm like, I could not have done that with my dad when I was your age. I'd have been so scared. Yeah. There's no way. So I just, really appreciate how hard it is to open up and talk about it, and how, brave the kids are to be able to, look at this stuff and share and talk about it, because it takes a lot of courage for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, you're off the hot seat.
Cool.
Kathleen, what about you?
It's my turn.
Yeah.
I don't know, really similarly to Lindsey, I always think about how my life could have been different had I learned some of the skills that we teach. I definitely didn't have a lot of great coping skills as a kid.
Yeah.
Felt a lot of isolation, never really felt like I fit in or had found that safe place that I could just be myself.
Yeah.
And so it's really, really cool to get to provide that for kids and be a part of, them learning that they're okay and they can, handle things, and they can, learn how to make their backpack lighter, and they don't have to go through all that same stuff that the people they love have. Yeah. I think when I first learned about the program, I had a similar experience to what Lindsey was just talking about. I learned what the program teaches to kids, and I was like, oh, so much in my life makes sense now, right? I learned that in my own struggles with drugs and alcohol, I was just trying to feel better. I just wanted to be okay. It didn't mean that I was a terrible person or that I was a mess or everything was horrible. I was just trying to feel better, and I needed to learn a healthy way to do that. And once I did, things started to get better, not just for me, but for my family.
Okay.
And I saw that recovery, like me doing my own recovery, like changed things for a lot of other people too, and gave them that opportunity to start their own. And so it's just so cool to be a part of that, because there's so much hope in what we do. To watch kids learn healthy ways to deal with stuff, and also to watch them have that forgiveness and to repair that relationship with the person who has hurt them in the past, is just so rewarding for me to get to be a part of. And would have been, a really cool experience to have had some of that as a kid. And I don't know, I think I just talked to myself in a little circle. It's really, really neat, and very hopeful. I think a lot of times I tell people what I do, and they're like, oh, that's so sad and it's so hard, and and there definitely are days where it is sad and it's hard, but it's a celebration, and to help kids be in recovery is really cool, because why hide your recovery from your family? Let them be a part of it. They want to be a part of it. They want to see you getting better. And when they do, we always hear from kids like, I'm just so proud of this person, and we hear from them the first couple of days of all the hard stuff they've been through, and then they've talked about how much this person has hurt them, and then they show up on Saturday and they're like, this is my mom, like, look how wonderful she is. They're just excited. They want that person to be okay, and it's just really, really powerful to see the forgiveness and the healing.
I was just thinking, my dad came through town. He lives far away, and so all of our extended family in Denver came together, and we just all shared just a little bit about what was going on. And I just noticed how much that meant to me, just to hear a little bit more vulnerably what people were excited about, what they were struggling with, what they wanted in their life, and each person shared for less than 5 minutes. And one of them, my cousin, shared something that was really vulnerable, and then kind of was apologizing afterwards. And I just had this sense of, don't apologize, like, after you're sharing, everyone else progressively was more vulnerable than the people who shared before you, and I felt that much more connected to him and to other people and who had shared a little bit more vulnerably about what was going on. And so I think that's again back to that Brené Brown thing. I guess that seems to be on my mind recently. It's that vulnerability and that sharing is what people want, and seems to be so counterintuitive to us. And that in these kids, it's so evident, it seems like, because they're not holding it back the same way that a lot of adults do. That pride and that wanting to connect is just right there.
We always joke with our adults that come to the program that kids are so much better at recovery than grown-ups are, because they're ready to share, they're ready to open up. They don't hold on to the past and those patterns and that anger the way that adults do, and they see their grown up for all the positive. When my mom's not drinking or my brother's not using, they're great. They do this is me, and that's the person I want to love, and who's around most of the time. They can separate that addiction and get to that vulnerable place so much quicker than adults, which is one of the best parts about working with kids. Is it's some of the stuff they say is just like, wow. That is amazing. And they have so much insight, and they're so smart, and they're so intuitive, and they just put things so simply. Where adults complicate everything and mess it up. So it's nice to be around that and get to be a part of that.
I think about kind of the Buddhist philosophy as well, that talks about how the kind of the process of enlightenment is not necessarily finding something that's out there that you don't have access to. It's really just kind of getting rid of all the things that we put in the way. And so in a way, that's kind of where kids are at. In a way, there's less layers occluding who they really are. And so being able to kind of give them the tools to access that.
Less of that need to reach outside of themselves to be okay. More able to find it inside. And then find that forgiveness for others as well, and for themselves. It seems like they just need the tools, and they're a lot more responsive in that way. They're so cool. Working with kids it's the dream. Even through my whole life, I always knew that I wanted to work with kids. because they really are. They're so cool, and they're funny, and they don't hold on to things in the same way.
Yeah.
They just are such cool little people. And it's really cool that we get to hang out with them all the time and learn so much from them.
Yeah, that's a big part.
Mm-hmm.
If you can open to them, like, they can teach us so much. I know I have worked with kids some, and also have experienced that, just how much I end up learning at the end of the day. And they're like, oh, thanks, and I'm like, no, thank you. Yeah. Well, thanks so much, guys, for taking the time. I also wanted to just go over some basic logistics of, like, what is the cost of the program? How do people get in touch with you if they're interested in the program? Just go over those quickly.
It's really easy to get in touch with us.
Okay.
Anyone can just call us. It's 303-745-2275, and they'll get right through to a counselor who can answer any questions about group or help them get signed up. And then cost
is $625 per child. Okay. However, we are very lucky to, we never turn away a child due to the inability to pay. So thanks to the Daniels Fund and a lot of our other funders, we can allow kids to come through even if they can't pay anything. So usually we just ask that they pay a portion of that. If they can pay, $5 to $625, anything in between there is great. And if they can't pay anything, that's okay too. Okay. So we want to really eliminate that barrier. Treatment's expensive, addiction's expensive.
Very much
so we really want families just to be able to come here and focus on their kids and focus on their healing.
Mm-hmm. And so if people were to pay in full, it'd be $625 would cover that 4-day course, and then I'm assuming there's also payments for, like, the aftercare programs and stuff too.
Those are all free.
All free. Wow. Cool.
So we take donations, but
yeah.
No, those are all free. The Stage 2 is free. Aftercare is free.
Cool.
Yeah, our celebration's free.
Wow. Well, thanks so much for what you do. I think it's such a valuable service for the community, and trying to move on and trying to have the next generation be a little bit healthier and more aware in how they approach substance use and addictive behaviors in general. And then also for making it so accessible, because I think that's so huge. As you said, it's so expensive. I mean, that's something that we're constantly trying to straddle, is trying to provide something that's really high quality and covering our own costs, and also keeping it accessible to people, because we know that a lot of people are especially after going through addiction, don't have a lot of extra funds lying around.
Yeah.
So.
Well, thanks for having us here and giving us a platform to talk about the children's program. And we love how much Sandstone values family work and really helping the whole family get better. That's so important to our mission, and we're so glad that you guys provide that and just provide such incredible service for the community.
Well, thank you.
Needed.
Yeah, thank you.
Great, and thanks so much for watching and/or listening. Sorry about the technical difficulties. I will include the number to call down below here, as well as a website to go check him out. Thank you, Kathleen. Thank you, Lindsey.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching.
Thanks.